Good day, friends, colleagues, and fellows. I'm making this video as a mere vlog and Bane's experiences and everything I think is important to kind of air on live YouTube. Anyways, I'm making this because of my uncertainty, partly excitement and uncertainty of possibly going abroad. So as you guys know, I've tried to apply for universities in Asia. Universities because not least because these universities actually require good skill. So I've applied for quite a couple of jobs online, and it seems to me that it's actually so nourishing to think that there are countries where you would be accepted. Like there are countries right now where if you're a math or a biology teacher, you'd be accepted to teach math or biology, even at university level. And you would have a salary, you would have a house, you'd be able to afford live. It's to me such a completely mesmerizing experience to think that you could be trapped in wherever you are. Like I don't understand. Like there's people trapped right now in Canada or UK, and these people can have a ticket out of their home country. They don't have to be without work. They don't have to be jobless or homeless. Um, they don't have to be retrieved, nor do they have to be or feel that they are not workable, material, or employable. Now, we know, all of us know that the problems with the employability, the market in employability, and the corporate structure. We understand the problems with the 8-to-5 regime, the infamous 8-to-5 regime, the 40-hour work week, as they call it. And I myself had a lot of knocks with the 40-hour work week. I had so many jabs and crosses to this work week that I felt it just wasn't for me. And I always felt empty. I always felt that this experience of there's almost this enlightenment 40-hour work week, or this enlightenment, what they called the enlightenment period or the renaissance in your youth, was you eventually study, you find a job, you eventually mature to the point where you work in some sort of corporate tenor or industry, where you take a seat up, you put your bum onto a chair and you start working away and you start to type and do your meetings. And this is the infamous dream of what they call the libertarian American dream, Statue of Liberty, all that nonsense. What they didn't understand is that the Statue of Liberty was actually a moniker for the idea of freedom, right? Capitalism or freedom, but actually inside that moniker there was also a lot of problems, but let's not get into that. The point is, liberty and freedom comes with a cost. I can't remember who said it, but you gotta have to offer up things. And I found it the hard way. Like if you're a young guy or an old guy, this message is more going to the older crowd. But liberty comes with a cost. Justice comes with a cost. Freedom comes with a cost. I've just now today looked into my other passion was prevention or suicide prevention, but also suicide or not suicide activism. That's an oxymoron. This is called pro-life activism. That is the justice service to people who believe that they're coming to an end in life. Them or their permitting the idea of rational right to die or assisted dying activism. These people have made an honest and meticulous decision that they want to serve no more. They want to end their lives, and they can do it in a justifiable manner. So I'm an activist for it. And today I've seen countless reports by the anti-opposition, the oppositional groups, by what they call the pro-life groups, the people who are in forced living. Basically, what the communists believe is you have to have some sort of service to the state. Pro-lifers or suicide prevention groups, they have a lot of demons, what they call themselves, but these people all believe into the justice or the servitude of life, to the point where someone is living unbeckoningly throughout any pain exists, no matter how they suffer, how torment. These people have some sort of service to live, no matter what the cost, which is quite scary. And I thought about this, that what scares me about the suicide injustice groups or the pro-life groups is their unwavering attitudes, their unsolicited attitudes to not bend, their tenacity not to bend, their absolute forcingly to still pervade their own narrative, the fact that life is somehow sacred, and someone else should have justice over the way that you live and you to control your life, which is quite scary to think that this is what you get with North Korea or like socialist or communist regimes, the idea of a contraption, right? Now, what scares me the most is that suicide prevention groups to me is a moniker or a emplacement of what could go wrong when society or when you lose control over your life in every respect. That could be the corporate industry, that could be any other industry, any type of people or any type of servitude where you have lost control. You're not the puppet master of your own life. Like the mafia calls it, a puppet master, right? You're not anymore in control of pulling the strings, the harm. You're being controlled by some sort of subliminal force, or some other force, some higher entity that you can't ordain. Like you're under this. You're serving this entity or this power. In any facet of life, we're all under an entity, whether we like it or not. But whether we're doing work in a corporate tenor, the point is we all have to justify our failure to serve or not serve. And this gets back to the point that I'm just not willing to serve a higher force if the force is corrupt. I'm not willing to. And then it comes back to the thing is, if you're thinking of sort of, you acknowledge that you're a free market agent, you want to be an agent deciding, an implicit agent deciding on your own force in life, your own good, your own life pathway, then you get into a very big, almost metropolis of potentials that could go wrong or right, depending on how you control. But I believe whenever you go out of the safety haven, and it's been, I don't know if you know about that experiment with an elephant, that it's a classic experiment where in a circus they've done it a couple of times. I think that it's been by the Moscow Circus. I remember in South Africa and Kenya, there were circuses, and even in Australia and Tasmania, I saw the Moscow Circus coming to town quite a couple of times. They travel the world and they come and they statuate themselves. And you see these elephants, around the pole. And how they train these elephants can literally break the pole. They're pretty strong. I don't know the newtons of force they could exert, but it's thousands. And you could do static analysis on exactly the force that an elephant could do. It's, of trucks. These things are pretty strong. They're mammoth strong. Pardon the pun here. But anyway, when you look at these gigantic megaliths of mountainic, animals, like, the elephants or the massive, these massive things that just, they're forced to, they basically can power stuff, and they can completely destroy, demolish whatever they see in front of them. But when you reckon this and you realize that this thing is being controlled by a single pole, it could be a threat. But they train these elephants so as to not think about the idea of being stronger than the pole. So they train the elephant to subliminate that the pole is stronger than them, that they can't overrun the pole. So they strap them to a pole. These elephants or these creatures would then circle the pole, and they would never even think about pulling through the pole, or, getting the pole, pulling out of the soil. They won't even constitute such a predicament. They would immediately think or implicitly derive that the pole is stronger to be able to outweigh any force that they might pull against. So the elephants won't even try. So what I'm trying to use with this is to show you guys that we're all trained to be the elephant around the pole. We're all trained in some way to respect some sort of, egalitarian respect towards the justice or a system. And we also think that this is the true way to live, right? And so the moment you discard that, you're getting into the realm of an infinite potentials. That's almost scary. Let's say the elephant were to discover that this pole is literally a weakling against me, and he would pull out the pole. Where the point is, now you broke. It's almost akin to what the Matrix called, breaking the Matrix. I think red pill, blue pill analogies, right? So now you take the red pill, you realize the truth about the nature that you're in, and just like the elephant noticed the truth about the nature that he or she or it is in, you realize the truth about your life and what you are. The question now becomes, now that the narrative is broken, where are we going to go with it? Because now that the elephant realized that the square box is, well, he was a round square peg in a round hole, but let's say the peg is now not a square anymore, right? So what is he to do with that information? What is he to do with that? And that's the question I have, is now that little domain is broken, the domain of inference, of enactment is broken, what can the elephant potentially do at this point to form a new domain, and how can it do so honestly, so as not to have a bad infringement or bad a bad expectation of what's to happen. So whenever you broke a reference frame, and that's the thing what Plato also called his theory of forms, is whenever you break a reference frame, something else got to give, something's going to give, right? And something's going to subject. My question is, what is subjecting to the point where, what would the new reference frame be? This creates a problem. So the first problem is whenever you're saying something is, you call bullshit on something, how do you adapt a new reference frame? Now, I was partly kind of mimicking that and kind of jabbing in that direction to show you guys that it's not an easy thing to break a reference frame. Let's say that the 40-hour work week or 45, just like the North Koreans can easily, they can snap out of their subjugations because they have been used to it. They've been trained to think like that. So the moment you break into that, you're going to say, no, 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 puppy, you're not going to completely break out of it. You still have remnants of that reference frame interjected into your mind. And your mind is being bendable to some form. So it's not as if you're just going to say, stop it, everything is now changing your mind. No, no, no. No. The thing is, you still think in a specific way. Now, what I want to show you the seriousness of framing. I want to show you the seriousness of what happens when someone, and just I'm speaking to myself, when someone is in a specific box that has been going for far too long, being trained to think a specific way, being done. And I want to use this to bridge the idea of going abroad, because it's a very scary thing. I mean, currently I'm panicking. I've had a couple nightmares for the last 3 days of going abroad. I'm panicking, man, because I think in one way, it's like putting different weights on the scale and trying to think by yourself. Like, in one way, I know I've been abroad the majority of my youth at least. So, and I'm telling myself, why the hell are you so afraid, Sam? Well, you don't have anything to lose at this point. Like, why are you so afraid of going abroad again? And then I think back to the reality that, particularly because of COVID, I mean, I could be locked up. Well, the reality of things are, I could be getting in a situation where, there's a massive ban. With COVID regulations, it's still fluctuating. We don't know the next wave. You might be in a contract where you can't really bomb out, and you might be in a situation where, hence, you're not being able to bomb out. You are being infringed in a specific situation where you have to serve a specific time, and whereby, because you can't really bomb out of that contract, within that time, regulations could change to the point where you can actually get back to your own country. Let's say stuff would go really wrong. You got to kind of think about these things. You cannot just go head first into a situation. I mean, I did it back in I was in a slippy slide. I don't know what you guys call it there, but it was like a slide down, a water slide. I was going head first, literally, just to spite my friends. I was still young. Okay, I was a stupid young part of me for that. But I got a bit of bumps, and I think I did sustain some brain damage after that. So just a practical experience. Don't go head first on any slide, and don't go head first in real life situations. So in one side, and what would happen to you if you're making a very difficult decision, especially when it comes to moving abroad? Because I've been living so long with my family, I feel kind of agoraphobic by thinking about going abroad, like just being in a new territory. Partly it's excitement, and I'm excited just to get away, just to get away from everyone and everything. I'm kind of excited to do exactly that, but on the other side, I also know the real dangers, like, of what could be happening. Like, let's say I get a panic attack, right, which is probably could be happening abroad, and a lot of people, I mean, teachers do get panic attacks to the point where, what if your contract is a scam? Maybe it's that one contract that you couldn't really judge priorly, and it's a massive scam. Maybe the guy doesn't like you and he wants to kind of do you in. What if you run into issues? And other things could be asked, like, what if things go so wrong where the home country or the neighboring country or the current, the current state of this is the current property, or what do you call it, but the territory that you're in, put an embargo on traveling to the point where you can all leave the region. What happens then? Like, then you see that's, to me, a room for complete tyranny, because then you're literally looking at homelessness at the point. I mean, you can't really. What's so scary to me is when you look at Australia and New Zealand right now. I saw it in the news. Like, you realize with New Zealand, they've locked up to the point where there's currently situations where I know of where there are specific students who can't go back home. They can't go back to New Zealand. and they're literally trapped in Australia or other countries like, let's say, Thailand or Indonesia, and they can't go back to New Zealand, which is quite scary if you think about it, because there are families in New Zealand waiting for their other family members or their forgotten others, and these people can't come back home. There's a statutory wall between the law and between people coming back home, which is scary because these things fluctuate in COVID. So to me, that's a very scary artifact about our constitutions and our laws, that it could fluctuate to the point is, where do you leave this to? Well, people lose their lives, they commit suicide, they have to go homeless. Because you can imagine if there's a travel ban to the point where you can't even come back home, and that's still the case in Australia and New Zealand, which is really scary, because if these, let's say, other countries in the East follow suit, and let's say you're traveling abroad and only one of these countries have a ban, you can't get out of or move across these countries because there's a ban in one of them. So either or, there's a ban and you can move across and you can move back and fro. So that's a massive issue. So let's say a ban in your country wouldn't really matter because you're with your family. There's no real risk of potentially going home. If you go abroad, this risk kind of snowballs, because if your region or your territory or your if the country that you're in, or the pertinent country that you're in, has less laxative legislation, and they decide to just clamp down on whatever aspect. Let's say there's a new virus trend that you can't actually keep up with everything in the news, and with the medical advancements, you can potentially keep up with it. The other way, these things could actually kind of open up overnight, which is scary to think that if in that time in that time frame you lose your job, you'd be running a really great risk of sitting literally without work and on the streets being homeless. So to me, that is one thing that I don't think I can miss looking at. I think I would have to fool myself not to look at this, and it's a reality. I mean, we do see it with students. A lot of students now, I think they've, in Australia again, there's a couple of students, at least a lot of them, a dozen of them, who've been going to a news reporter, and these people just complain about they're not being able to go back home to New Zealand or to other countries because of the clamping down of Australia to being unable to leave. So this is a real problem, especially if you're going to go abroad, you don't know people in that country, and you want to potentially come back if failure ensues. It's not always, you can't have a guarantee today because of COVID. I mean, you can't realistically say within 2 years I'm going to go abroad now, but within 2 years I'm going to come back. You can't realistically know this, because in 2 years' time there might be actually a further torpedo of restrictions in advancing the world. Wars could happen. All these sort of things are the culmination of a huge warning red flag that happens in the. I mean, we do see stories, and I don't think these stories are made up, about people who literally went into, they crossed war zones, even they were trapped forever there. They couldn't come back, and they even committed suicide. These things can be non. You can't not respond to these things. I think it would be intellectually dishonest not to mention or to revamp this potential happening. So you got to kind of consider these things, that and this goes back to the idea that you run a risk. I want to kind of go back to my motivation. I'm getting to the point where I'm just tired. I'm tired of having to explain myself to everyone. I'm tired of being part of the network. I'm tired of pretty much, like, the domain that I'm in is so small. There's a lot of people, people I knew from my childhood who can contact me and literally can track me down. I just hate that. I hate knowing that these people can voluntarily track me down whenever they want to, and they can completely cause a lot of havoc and mess in my life by doing just that, because I'm not really in the position where I really want to talk to a lot of people. I don't really want to have too many people know too much about me at this point. I want to be quite clandestine and retrieved from this point. So I think this is a very good ticket to me out of this situation, because I could be making a living where I don't have to worry about these people pinning me down the whole time, tracking me down. I could be meeting a great handful of mates, friends, colleagues, worksmen that I could meet on a weekly, schedule, whom I can talk to. I feel where I currently am, it's so restricted. People are so nationalistic in a way that um, they have a very different background than I have. It's almost like close to impossible, almost like going to the moon impossible to really connect with people the level that I feel I want to connect. I'm a very egalitarian person, so I think going to Asia predominantly is going to be very fruitful for me because I want to discover I really, this was my dream. I really wanted to go to the Buddhist monasteries and meditate with one of these really high leaders. It was a dream I've had since I was a teenager that I wanted to go to the East to walk the Buddha trail, the Buddha trail. Um, I wanted to go to one of these real Buddhist mega churches, these monasteries where people meditate and they do yoga and they have a spiritual hiatus. I want to tell about it. I wanted to write about it. I wanted to become a blogger and write about these experiences. I'm a very open individual to other cultures. I thought, especially the East, like I love the East, I love Asia. And I thought, this is going to be the perfect experience for me to go abroad. And if this thing doesn't end up in a disaster, I will have a massive story to tell. So between that and the driving factor that I'm currently in, I do have partly a contract. I won't say I've signed it yet, but the thing is, within a week or two, I would know for sure if I'm gonna go. If I'm gonna go, right? So I have a lot of fears right now, and I'm not really sure what the best and the wisest decision would be. Because in one way, I feel like I've been staying in the kitchen for too long. I feel the heat every day underneath my ass. I have a very cushy position at this point. Like, don't lie to you. At least it's a very nice town I'm living in, very nice position that I have. But I feel that I don't deserve this. I feel like I don't want to. The eyes, the news, people every day. You see people who know me, like friends, very, very distant friends who make contact with me and they like checking up on me in a way. Like, where are you now in life? Did you get a job? What are you doing? I keep explaining to these people, yeah, I am still out there being a part-time teacher. I'm helping students with this and that and that and that. And they kind of, whenever they don't hear 8 to 5 job or 40-hour work week, they immediately assume that you're unemployed. And then they're just like, they feel so good about themselves because, yeah, you're still unemployed, right? I'm kind of tired of that, to the point where, you see, when you're abroad, you don't have to worry about these things. You don't have to worry about having people running into you that you don't want to see. You don't have to worry about these things. Like, as one of the massive, I think the massive proponents of change is this idea that you can change without having the noose around your neck, so to speak. Like, you can change in a way that nobody's holding you back. And I think that's one of the massive, to me, the goodness about change in that absolute sense, that you have this feeling of absolute openness and unrestrictiveness that you don't necessarily get by staying in one place. And to me, the staleness also gets too much. And I think there's a heaps of, to me, there's a bomb of emotions going on. I don't really know how to deal with it, but I do get nightmares about going abroad, and especially my nightmares usually favors the idea of contact completely being cut, to the point where there's no internet connection, no one's willing to help. I'm in a desolate place, I'm stranded. I do get nightmares of this quite a lot. Nightmares of saying goodbye to my old family, going abroad. It feels like going to the military in a way. So I do get nightmares about this, and in my dreams, I usually get panic attacks about this as well. So it's a very strong here or no there. Like, it's to me a very strong emotion either way. For instance, the fact of going abroad is panicful, but then staying here to me is also panic. And then going abroad is very exciting at the same time. Like, it's not the case that I'm just panicking. I'm looking forward to a new experience, but at the same time, I don't want to get stranded. I don't want to go homeless. I don't want to have to be pushed to the point where there's absolutely no other option open. That to me scares the shit out of me, to be honest. And I'm just not sure. I'm doing my research at this point, but I'm scared that there's a scam involved. And as best as I research, I'm scared that the panic that I face would be too much to bear, and that there would be too much. It sounded to me like it would be a harem of options to at least get to the point of getting a work visa and stuff. So yeah, I'm not really sure about what to say anymore about this, but maybe it's just true that fortune favors the brave, to go by the Unreal Man saying. Although fortune doesn't always favor the brave, sometimes fortune bites you in the ass, and then that's bad luck or bad karma, however you want to call it. It's not really fortune, but it's literally not a good. I think there's problems with saying that fortune favors the brave, because it certainly isn't always the case that risk taking is always the best, outcome of a specific decision. And in this case, I really want to make a calculative risk, and I don't know what is the most calculative. Yeah, so I think I'm always going to stop and just meditating about this decision for quite a while now. I also want to talk about decisions you might make in your life. Like, you might get to these really bad crossroads where you're just unable to really make a decision. But I think, to me, the worst case scenario would be to live in a place and never having tried stuff. Like, to live in a place or a life that you live, and you can see that. And this is kind of going back to my next subject, that the reasons to me why one needs to move out of the bounds. One needs to completely just discard what they know is tried, tested, and true, and go abroad, or just get out of the place that you currently are at. And one of the massive things that I just talked about is the idea of staleness. This feeling that things are just getting very, very stale. Living in a place for far too long than you feel invited to, and especially you see when you're an unemployed man or a person who's partially employed. If you've lived in a place for far too long, it's like people will check up on you. People try and make contact with you. They'll try and check what you're up to. They will use you as a smoke screen for their own delusions and fears, and they will kind of point finger at you and make you out as if you're a complete loser or whatever but it truly is. There's a way to carry, to me, by staying in a place for far too long, especially when you've known success like I had. Like, I've known success, and I'm continuously in a situation where I'm being provoked to act, because some people are really malicious to the point where it takes only one really malevolent person to make life completely difficult for me, to the point where I just want to scream and just want to get away from it. And I feel, in a way, I would kind of prove that I have enough guts to get away from an environment that I know is toxic. The next thing that I do think is unpardonable is this idea that people around you, especially neighbors, like, you're obviously going to live in a society where there's neighbors, there's people in your town who would know and take notice of your living with your family, being alone, or failing, or whatever it is in life, or just not getting by in that specific region of territory. The same thing has happened to the Army and Marines, where the Marines who retired or gotten retrenched. These people ended up living with their family. Many of these people did PTSD afterwards, actually, because of living with their parents or family members, never being able to get employment again. They've been in such a zone, and then they move to the point where they're completely just unemployable to the point. So this becomes a very flatlining phenomenon, because after a time, where whatever society you're living in want to see advances, and if you're in a small society like I'm currently, people start to know your story, and also they carry the story over and over and over and over, and they make you seem as that people like to talk in smaller societies. In smaller towns, the velocity is a lot stronger, because particles oscillate, and the momentum is much more pronounced in that case. So that's physics at least, but in reality, it's also the case. I mean, things have a much higher impact on you personally when you're in a smaller town. People, well, they talk, and you can, if you fuck up with one individual, people will know about it. People will talk, especially when you're culture like I am. People will talk about you, and they will completely blacklist your name, and they will make sure that you pay verbally and physically, mentally through that. So there's a couple, to me, there's a motivating factor with getting away.
primarily, I do think the motivating factor is society being very dismissive of people getting stale, and especially when it's your society that you've been brought up, it gets to you to think that you've lived in society for time, society being having to be the mother figure in your life, we call Mother Earth Gaia, but sometimes Gaia can turn against you, and at least on a districtal level, to the point where Gaia could turn against you. Let's say you're in Africa, or you're in Tanzania, or you're wherever else continent, let's say in South America, North America. But the point is, your region might turn against you to the point where you notice it in reactions, in small micro reactions from people, the way they act, the way they speak about you and stuff. And hence, there's also the emotional reaction from you to the outside world. I mean, you getting frustrated by this. We are very social beings in a way, so we get frustrated and we get offended by the fact that other people talk down on us. So you would find after some time that these things will get to you. When you're living in society, you're unemployed, people will look at you as if you're a freak. Now, I'm 3 years old now in this where I'm living, and I can tell you it's starting to happen. People look at you as if you've got no hope. You're just someone who's like, you got no pride in you anymore. You get no respect from people. You get no respect from society anymore, because especially when you're being housed by your family members, you realize that even though they're very, very nice and very gentle, very polite, or very encompassing to your situation, other people won't necessarily be that way, and you won't really do anyone a favor by living with them indefinitely. So to me, that's a very massive motivating factor of just getting away, to the point where I almost don't even care what happens after this. I just want to get away, because I can't kind of stand another day being in this town and people just talking down on you constantly, and just it's just so frustrating, so painful to have to be constantly just you have worth, and then because of a specific situation in your life you can't get past it, and then you gotta move. The only potential thing that you could be doing is you can change coordinates, right? You can have a logistic shift, and that's the only potential that you can sit with. Is I think when things are made in bad, you have the ability to shift your position to somewhere else on earth where things might be more appreciative to you. I mean, you just got to keep shifting, but you got to try to do that at least. So this is where I think is my main motivating factor, if you ask me, is my society, the toxicity in it, the fact that some people are overcapitalizing it. It gets to you. It really gets to you, to the fact that you feel like a convict, you feel like a criminal, not being able to have what everyone else have. You can't go out, you can't take a train, you can't take a bus to anywhere, and I think it gets to you. And you would know what I'm talking about. It does something to your mental health as well. So this is a very important situation I talked about mental health, because you got to understand every day in a quote unquote mental institute deteriorates you. So every day being emotionally drained and cuffed would eventually get to the point where in 2 or 3 years from this point, it will even get worse. So you want to kind of spare yourself from that, almost that turbulence of having to go through this for another 3 years. So this is to me the important factors of what motivates somebody to really want to go away, and why I think it's an important decision, albeit fears that this might happen, because it would be. And I do think that you kind of have to curb, sometimes you just got to curb your anxiety, because if the motivating or the driving factor to not being ridiculed or not being strayed, or just as a change because it's getting too much for you, then I think that I won't necessarily say that it's the wisest decision, but in some contexts it could be the wisest decision based on how you make it. So you've got a lot of playing field, and although it's very fearful, like I'm experiencing this fear right now, I do think that I'm just not willing. The thing is, I'm just not willing to go and badger further, living with my family, having them to look after me. I just can't do this further. Like I feel if it has to be the case with if I go abroad, let's say, and get a massive panic attack and I go homeless, if this has to be my life, then I guess it's just part of nature versus nurture. That's just nature's way of saying that the chips fell in bad. I guess at some point you just want to kind of throw the dice and see what happens, what it brings. And I'm to the point where I'm tired of the same people. I'm tired of the community that just never completely accepts you and think that they know everything about you. I'm tired of it. I want to meet new people. I don't want to be judged by a community that never even served me, who always thought I was under, I was under them or lower in the echelon scale. I don't think I want to serve anything to this community. I don't want to pay a dime to this community. So I think that's my main motivating factor. For you, this might just be the very thing that you need. You might need to get out and risk that, risk whatever happens, risk homelessness, risk this. Sometimes you just got to risk to get away from a troubling or embarrassing situation. And it could be just that plane ticket away from a better life or a worse life, who knows? But I do think that the forerunner route is potentially the only way that men like me can potentially suffice. Find a job somewhere else where you could be unbothered and where you can just live a very basic existence, go do the things that other people dream about doing for the less money that they pay, because these things essentially are the passive income, people passive economics or passive goods or passive assets. These are the passive assets because these things are truly uncumbersome in terms of money and financial means. I mean, if you think about the passion or the combination of positivity that you get from friendships, these things can be put into a financial, number or any type of financial metric. So what you essentially get out of this is unmeasurable in terms of this financial scale. So this is what I'm talking about, is I want to invest my life, not so as to kind of commit financial suicide, but so as to envelop my ability to negotiate with other people, get more context. I do think, I can't really speak for you, but I'm getting twisted by thinking that not doing this would eventually get me to such a low state in my life where I would never have a way out. You might need to make the same decision for yourself. I can make it for you, but I'm to the point where I don't want 2022 to be the same year. Just tired of this, man.